With a public hearing on budget and truth in taxation. Mr. Martin, are you doing that?
Yes.
Thank you. Come on up.
All right, good evening, President Berrigan, Dr. Sprout, members of the board, members and guests. I'll be presenting on the district's 2024-25 budget and truth in taxation hearing tonight. All of the numbers in the budget are the same as in the copy that we reviewed at the board meeting back in June, but tonight we'll go into a little bit more detail and have an opportunity for public comment. I'd like to thank Ashley Miranda, our Executive Director of Finance, and also the entire business office for all of their work on preparing our 24-25 budget. The state law prescribes specific steps that need to be followed for school districts to prepare their budget each year. First, a budget needs to be proposed before July 5th, and we took care of that back at the June meeting on June 13th. After that meeting, the proposed budget and announcement of this public hearing were posted on the Department of Education website and have been available to the public from there, also from a link on our website. Districts are also required to adopt a budget by July 15th, and we'll be taking care of that step tonight. And when we met back in June and proposed the budget, the legislature had not yet passed a state budget for 24-25 and had not adjourned for the year. That has since happened, and fortunately the assumptions that were put into our proposed budget line up with what ultimately ended up in the state budget, and there weren't any curveballs, any material curveballs. I'll start with a quick overview of our major fund budget for next year. Our maintenance and operations fund, which is our primary operating fund, increases to $66.2 million. That's $3.8 million higher than it was this year. Our unrestricted capital fund budget will be $32.4 million. That's very similar to what it was this year, and that includes both the revenue that comes in our state funding for capital and from our capital override, as well as fund balance that has been accumulated in previous years, and I'll show how those amounts break down in a future slide. Our federal projects fund budget will be $8.6 million, and that is one that you'll notice is a noticeable decline from last year. That has to do with the expiration of the federal ESSER funds, the pandemic relief funds. Looking a little bit more closely about the $3.8 million increase in our M&O budget, our maintenance and operations fund budget is driven by a state formula that's based primarily on the number of students that are enrolled. So the change in our budget this year has to do with adjustments to that state formula, as well as assumptions about the number of students that'll be enrolled as we continue to grow. About $1 million of the increase in our budget is tied to a 2% increase in the base level in the state funding formula, and also the transportation funding in the state formula that will be in effect for next year. Our override will also grow by about $500,000. That's tied to changes in the state formula, and also more students being incorporated into that formula, which is based on prior year enrollment. Those numbers are offset by some one-time funding that goes away in 2024-25. Last year in 23-24, the state allocated $300 million of funding on a one-time basis to school districts. Our share of that was about $1.9 million. That's not continued in the 24-25 budget, and so that's a number that offsets some of the other increases. Two other numbers that go into our total change in our maintenance and operations fund budget are that we expect to begin the year with about a $2.5 million higher fund balance than we began the 23-24 school year, and that we expect student enrollment to grow by about 3%, which grows our budget by $1.6 million. That's a fairly conservative number, and we would prefer to be on the conservative side when preparing a budget and not overestimate our enrollment growth. This next slide shows what average daily membership, which is the measure of enrollment that's used to determine funding, has been over the last 10 years. The number that you see on the far right for 2025 is the number that's assumed in our budget. The number for 2024 is the most recent data that was available when we prepared the proposed budget. And then every prior year are the actual numbers where we ended the year. So you can see that the assumption in our budget lines up with what the trend has been for growth over the past few years. This next slide gives you a look back at what our maintenance and operations fund budget has been over that period. As our enrollment has grown, the maintenance and operations fund budget has grown, and obviously that accounts for state funding increases as well. And the two colors that you see on these bars, the gray represents annual revenues that are coming in. The green represents the portion of our budget that comes from carry forward from previous years. So that number is a little bit higher in 24-25. Some of the one-time funding from last year went into our beginning balance for next year and will still be available for use in the current year. I'll shift now from the maintenance and operations fund to talk a little bit about our capital fund budget. This one, there aren't as many significant changes. Our district additional assistance override, which is voter approved, increases by about $400,000 this year. That's tied to the changes in the state funding formula, as well as higher student count being used in that calculation. Our district additional assistance from the state will also increase based on higher student counts last year than in the year before. That formula is based on prior year enrollment. And we expect to have a bit higher interest earnings in the capital fund that will grow that budget number. We do expect to start the year with a slightly lower capital fund balance than we started the 23-24 school year. And that's expected as we complete some capital projects. And this next slide will show how our unrestricted capital budget breaks down between the annual revenues coming in from our capital override and district additional assistance from the state, as well as the carry forward that's been accumulated for large projects. If this chart had 26, 27, and 28, we'll expect to see that green portion of the bar go down a little bit as we complete some of the LEC expansion projects and spend some capital funds for school number 10 as well. Finally, I mentioned that our federal funds budget will be lower this year than it was last year, and that's tied to the expiration of the federal ESSER funds. This is probably the biggest challenge that every school district in the state was working through in their budget this year, the change in federal funding and how to incorporate that into their plan for the next year. For Levine, the majority of our ESSER funded positions were transitioned to other funds and will continue in the 24-25 school year, supported from other sources. And any position that was not continuing, staff in that position were offered an alternate position for the 24-25 school year. So for example, certified tutors that were hired for addressing learning loss using pandemic dollars were offered teaching positions in the 24-25 school year. Our budget for 24-25 also benefits from an increase in the classroom site fund. This is where money from the 0.6% sales tax for education and some funds from the state land trust is deposited. The classroom site fund is distributed based on each district's share of students, and the per pupil allocation increased by $34 to $792 from $758 last year. That increase will allow us to continue to fund 16% of teacher salaries from the classroom site fund. In prior years, we've increased the percentage of teacher salaries funded from the classroom site fund. This year, we'll keep that stable at 16%, and the growth in the fund will allow us to keep it at that level and fund the higher teacher salaries for next year. Speaking of teacher salaries, one number to highlight in the 24-25 budget is that starting teacher salary will increase to $56,100. That number doesn't include stipends for hard-to-fill positions like special education or middle school science, and also doesn't include up to $3,800 in performance pay or any earnings from additional services, additional duties taken on by teachers. The average teacher salary is budgeted to be $69,880 this year, closing in on $70,000, and that will keep the district among the highest paying districts in the state. Every year when school districts complete their budget and submit to the Department of Education, average teacher salary information is compiled by the state, and in November they prepare a report that shows the average salary for each district. There's over 200 school districts in the state, and based on last year's data in 2024, Levine was in the 20 to 25 range for highest salary. So right around the top 10%, and would expect that at minimum we'll stay there this year, potentially inch up a couple spots depending on how other districts' salary changes year to year compared to ours. With that, I'll shift over to talking about truth in taxation. And just as Arizona state law specifies specific processes for school district budgets, there's also certain requirements for the property taxes levied to support those budgets. One requirement is that any tax levy for adjacent ways, which is funding that can be used to make improvements to property adjacent to district-owned property, so sidewalks, streets, driveways, things like that. Any levy for adjacent ways is subject to a truth in taxation hearing. So we published notice of that hearing back on June 27th, and there's a screenshot of what the notice looked like on the right side of this slide. And the truth in taxation levy for adjacent ways this year will be $995,178. The tax rate needed to generate that $995,178 is essentially the same tax rate that we had in place for adjacent ways last year. It's slightly lower, but by a very small amount. So essentially holding the tax rate stable for adjacent ways. This next slide shows the impact of the adjacent ways levy per $100,000 of home value. And the adjacent ways levy results in about $27.50 per $100,000 of home value this year, very similar to what the number was last year. One thing to keep in mind is that the adjacent ways levy is subject to this truth in taxation hearing as required by state law, but it's only a small part of our overall tax rate for the district, and so I also want to share what our overall tax rate looks like. This slide shows our primary and secondary tax rates over the last 10 years, broken down by each portion of the tax rate. The blue bar at the very bottom is our primary tax rate. Most of that is a levy that we're required to have in the state funding formula known as the qualifying tax rate. That makes up 1.59 of the primary tax rate. The adjacent ways levy is another 0.27. And the balance is, the 0.02 is for the difference between our transportation revenue control limit and transportation support level. So that's what our primary tax rate is made up of. It's a bit lower this year than it was last year. Above that, the green bar represents the tax rate for our voter-approved 15% maintenance and operations override. That rate has gone down a little bit this year because our tax base has grown more than the total dollars for the M&O override. The same is true of the voter-approved capital override, the gray portion of the bar above that. And then the final portion of our tax rate, the yellow bar on this chart, is the tax rate for our bonds. So this year, the tax rate for bonds will be 1.4073. And one thing to note is with the $50 million bond authorization that will be on the ballot in November, the projected tax rate for bonds, assuming that's approved, will be 1.35. So this tax rate is projected to continue to decline even with approval of the $50 million bond authorization. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about our 2024-25 budget or the truth in taxation hearing.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, and this is a unique opportunity where we have a public hearing, so if there's any questions from the public, you may certainly ask them at this time. I'll wait a moment. Okay, Charlie will be here afterwards, or you can certainly email or call him throughout the week. Charlie, I just want to say, I see that you have added in some additional information that we haven't seen in the past, particularly some of these charts. They're very helpful for me. I think they're very helpful for our public to sort of provide more of a picture of what things like our tax rate look like and our student enrollment. And those are particularly important as we see the district continue to grow and understand the needs of opening schools and remodeling schools and some initiatives that may be on the ballot this November. So thank you for including that information.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we will now call the regular meeting to order. Elsa, will you do roll call, please? Here? Here.
Here.
Okay, if you can all please stand with me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we need to approve the agenda for the evening. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the approval of the minutes from our June 13th board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Dr. Sprout, your superintendent's report.
Okay. Thank you, President Berrigan and governing board members. We have a lot of people that came here tonight to hear Charlie's presentation. It's pretty exciting. I could see how enthralled everyone was with our budget hearing on truth and taxation. Actually, this is a meeting where most of our administrators are not here, but it's a very special meeting because we are recognizing tonight 6 students who were promoted from 8th grade in the Levine School District and have now completed high school and are moving on to college. And we will be recognizing our 2024 Levine Education Foundation Scholarship recipients. These are highly accomplished students, and we are so excited to see, and you'll get to hear where they're going to school, the degrees that they are pursuing as of today. It's okay to change, but we are just exceptionally proud. To remind everyone, this represents a 4-year commitment by the Levine Education Foundation to these students, and that's 8 semesters, and we are super excited to see what these next 4 years bring for each of you, and to be a part of your support team as you head into this great adventure of college. And so I've asked them each to come forward to give a speech no, I'm just kidding. They do not have to do that. If you would come forward, we'll get your picture with President Berrigan and myself. And let's just get the whole, and Ms. Getsky is our designated extra governing board member. And then we'll get a picture of all of you together, okay? So first of all, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Liliana Fainette. Liliana, come on up. Liliana was promoted from Charleside Point Performing Arts Academy. She will be attending Arizona State University and majoring in kinesiology. So congratulations. And by the way, parents and family, if you want to get a picture, feel free to come up here and do that. Our next student, Abby Brotherton, was promoted from Vista del Sur Accelerated Academy. She will be attending Montana State University, majoring in environmental science and fish and wildlife ecology and management. So Abby, would you please come forward? Next, we have the first of 2 students that are our inaugural Lisa Sandomir Memorial Scholarship recipients. And that's based on a gift by one of our principals who passed away. Her family has donated this money to former students at MC Cash. And so our first student from MC Cash who will be attending Scripps College, majoring in psychology, is Jocelyn Pastor.
At least you both are wearing jeans, so.
Our next Lisa Sandomir Memorial Scholarship recipient who will be attending Northern Arizona University to major in social work is Bianca Cardona. I'm sorry. Sorry, Butch, I was, there we go. Okay. Okay, Butch, you can back up one now. Now, Sam Hith, I'm going to say this correctly because he's not going to the university. He's going to the University of California. You don't even need to say Berkeley, right? I don't know. There's a special rule there. I think the Berkeley crew, but we'll go ahead and say it. So I'll just stop. Sam Hith Padala attended Vista del Sur Accelerated Academy. He will be going to the University of California at Berkeley to major in computer science. Congratulations. Come on up. Five, okay. Takmina Rahman is a Vista del Sur Accelerated Academy student. She is majoring, going to ASU and majoring in mechanical engineering, and she is at some far place across the world right now with her family doing a trip and was not able to be here tonight, but let's give her a round of applause as well. Congratulations. Yeah, and now we'll get you all in a group picture. Parents, if you'd like to get a group picture, come on up.
Congratulations.
So I know each one of you students represents a group of people that have supported you, and so let's give our families, whether they're here or not, and friends, a big round of applause as well. So thank you. And I live about a mile from ASU, so you ASU students, if you need a meal or something, just reach out to me. And parents, if you want me to keep an eye on them, my wife works at ASU too, so we'll have you covered. But again, congratulations. Our district-wide summer school was a resounding success with 910 students attending across all campuses. Students not only dove into math and ELA or English language arts lessons, but also interactive engineering, gardening, coding, and art enrichment activities. A notable highlight captured in this image is incoming fourth graders at MC Cash School harvesting lettuce from the school's Sprout garden. That's not my garden, that is from the Sprouts grocery chain. This hands-on experience aimed to educate students about gardening and sustainability while also fostering a sense of community as they shared their harvest with others. Overall, our summer school program provided a comprehensive educational experience that combined academic learning with practical engaging activities. We'd like to thank our team here that oversaw that, and of course all of our teachers that participated and took on these extra roles over the summer. On July 31st, we'll have our kickoff with our staff on what we call our Welcome Back celebration. Looking forward to seeing governing board members there. This is how we kick off the year with our staff. It will be held at the Grand Canyon University Arena this year. We are very excited. It's always a great time to gather together and to kick off our year. We have an outstanding governing board video. I've gotten to watch it. And so thank you, board, for doing that. Our theme this year is Levine's Got Talent. And that's all I'm going to say, but it'll be something that we feature not only the talent of our staff, but of course the amazing talent that we find in every one of our students. Levine's Got Talent. Also wanted to just give you some calendar dates as we head into the final days of summer. Next week, Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll have our administrator retreat. Then new teachers show up on July 22nd, and we have our new teacher induction during that time. Then all of our teachers will report on the 29th, as you can see, Welcome Back celebration. Meet the Teacher Night on August 1st, and then first day of school on August 5th. Here we go. And that concludes my report. And again, congratulations to our students, and we wish you all the best as you head off to college. Yeah, we can.
Okay, we're going to move into the business portion of our meeting. Families, you are certainly welcome to stay for that, but now would be a good time if you wanted to go celebrate for dinner or just get home and do your air conditioning, whatever you want to do. Thank you for being here with us, though. You doing the legislative update?
Yes.
You are? Okay, Dr. Sprout, go for it.
Okay, thank you, President Berrigan. Tonight we have an update for the board on the recently completed Arizona legislative session. The purpose of this presentation is to share pertinent bills that were signed into law and to give the board an overview of the FY 2025 budget. Charlie and I will be tag teaming this, and the legislative session opened on January 8th, so we had a 160-day session, concluding on June 15th. 260 bills out of 1,066 introduced bills were signed by Governor Hobbs, and she also vetoed 73 bills. As you can see, the general effective date of this legislation, unless there's an emergency clause, and we don't see anything in that falls into that category, we'll have until then. We'll be working with our attorneys, our team, and as well as the Arizona School Boards Association to move these legislations the legislation that has been passed into our district policy, and we'll be making those recommendations in upcoming meetings. I've asked Charlie to go ahead and step back up to the mic and handle the business slide or the budget slides here.
So a big part of what happens during legislative session, or the most consequential thing for school districts, is the state budget. And some of the changes to funding in the 2025 state budget, as I mentioned earlier, include a 2% inflation increase to that state formula that drives most of our funding. One that we were happy to see is the continuation of $200 million for building renewal grants from the School Facilities Board. That's the pot of money that districts can apply to for things like roofs and painting. The only negative thing to say about that money is that there are rumblings that there are already $200 million worth of projects in the queue, and so we'll continue to pursue that funding and hope those grants stay there. The state budget eliminated $300 million of one-time funding, as I mentioned earlier. And one other change is there was some previously enacted funding to increase district additional assistance, which is per pupil funding for capital, and an add-on funding weight for students that are eligible for free or reduced price lunch. A few years ago, that was put into law, intended to increase in perpetuity this year, so to increase the funding formula inputs for those things. But with the state budget deficit this year, that funding was made available for 2025 on a one-year basis. So we'll see that money this year, but by default, it would come out of the state budget next year unless there are efforts to restore it. So that was one downside to the state budget, but does not have a negative effect on us in 2025 at least. Oh, okay, great. The state budget also includes some non-funding changes. These are known as budget reconciliation bills that have law changes to implement the budget. One notable one for school districts is that there's a law change that prohibits a school district from offering a contract to a continuing or probationary teacher until March 15th. Other bills related to the budget, a good, nice one that was in there is approval for school districts to exceed the aggregate expenditure limit in the Constitution this year. In past years, when that approval has not been given as part of the budget process, it creates a lot of concern during the middle of the next year, hoping that the legislature will give that authorization and not impose mid-year cuts on school districts. So that's been approved for the 24-25 year. There won't be that concern mid-year, but the hope is that eventually there'll be a long-term solution to that where it doesn't become something districts are worried about every year. The budget reconciliation bills also included some processes to implement a property tax appeal case that's affecting school districts. So the Meyer versus Maricopa County property tax appeal case found that Maricopa County incorrectly assessed certain properties between 2016 and 2023. And as a result, some of the taxes that were collected during those years, including taxes collected for school districts, will need to be refunded to taxpayers. So the budget a nice thing is directed the Department of Education to recalculate state aid for those years without individual action from school boards. So we'll recover, school district will recover some of those funds through that process, and also outline some processes by which districts that are significantly impacted by these property tax refunds can borrow money for cash flow if necessary. For our district, the estimated impact is $315,000, which sounds like a big number in isolation, but as a percentage of our budget and a percentage of our reserves, is a relatively small number compared to other school districts. There are some districts that have many $1 million of property tax refunds to manage through, and we're fortunate to not be in that situation in Levine. With that Case Meyer versus Maricopa County tax judgment, we'll keep an eye on how things play out this year and determine going into next year if there's action that needs to be taken to recover any funds related to those property taxes. But there's no negative material impact to us this year, and looking through the list of affected school districts, we're definitely one of the fortunate districts to have a smaller impact than others. And I'll hand it back to you, Dr. Sprout.
Thank you. Go ahead and go back one, Butch. That first bullet prohibits a school district from offering a contract before March 15th. Our typical month for issuing contracts is February. We'll be working with our attorney to determine how to handle this. We will obviously comply with the law, but the timing and when the board approves these contracts, and we know when they'll be issued, we're going to be working with our attorney, and I'm sure we're going to receive guidance on that. But that's a big one for us because it affects how quickly we can go out and start hiring teachers. Okay, Butch, we'll move on. Some other legislation that passed is one was related to the stocking and administration of glucagon for hypoglycemia situations. In this, as with many of these, we will be awaiting legal and policy guidance, and then we'll be forwarding that to the board as recommendations for policy changes. Our team is already looking at this. With respect to teaching regarding the Holocaust, we are already in compliance with that statute and have actually recorded our plan for this instruction with the Arizona Department of Education. 4 more statutory or new statutes that have been passed and will be statutes related to prohibiting registered sex offenders from serving on school district governing boards. Again, awaiting legal and policy guidance. In fact, who will be enforcing that is to be determined. Next, a statute was passed, or a law was passed that requires sex offenders with legal custody of a child that is enrolled in our school to notify our school. Once again, waiting legal and policy guidance. The next 2 are more HR related regarding that any employee that applies for a job and fails to disclose a crime that they have committed against children that is now a Class 6 felony. And also, now that we are basically reporting any inappropriate actions by non-certified employees, if they are also being disciplined in another state, that needs to be reported. And again, on all of these, we are awaiting legal and policy guidance, which will be coming to the governing board. What didn't happen was an extension of Proposition 123, which is a major revenue source, and that needs to be resolved this year, and so we'll be waiting to see what happens there. While we are very happy about the getting through FY25 with respect to the aggregate expenditure limit, there is no permanent solution at this point, and so that did not happen. And in case you haven't heard already, you're going to have a long ballot in November with 11 propositions that have been initiated by the legislature. And at this point, we are under the impression, because signatures are still being counted, that there will be 3 citizen-led initiatives on the ballot as well. So it will be a long ballot. Would like to say thank you to the governing board. We know that you are the ones that ultimately implement these policies. You've done it for many years. We've done it very well. And so thank you for your work in the past. And then the next step for us will be making recommendations to you as a board for any policy changes. Also would like to say thank you to our staff and lobbying groups. Our entire council team is always involved at some level in this process. Charlie has spent a lot of time with respect to the budget, but all of our team has been involved in their areas. I also wanted to make sure that the board knew who do we work with, who are the lobbying groups that we work with, and you see those listed there. Each of these groups are advocates for our district and have provided really invaluable assistance in getting as positive as possible results from the legislative session. And I will say it one more time, part of the reason we wanted to do this presentation was just to prepare you for policies that we will be recommending based on the actions taken during the 24 legislative session. And with that, any questions from the board?
Any questions or comments? I'll just add, in case you all don't know, that the language on there says an aggregate expenditure limit allows us to exceed that. It makes it sound like we're exceeding our budgets. That is not the case. It's a sort of poorly named or poorly phrased. It's allowing us to spend what the legislature allocated to us in our per pupil amounts. And so to have to get that approved and authorized each and every year is a little ridiculous. It's sort of already approved once they approve our base student funding. So that continues to be frustrating. That's why we look for a permanent solution on that. I was also disappointed to see that the governor and the legislature chose to balance the budget on the backs of students by removing the free and reduced lunch weight. And we have a lot of students in this district that fall into that category. Those are students who are living in some level of poverty. And I know that I will personally be working to get that reinstated for fiscal year 26 moving forward, and I hope that we will continue to support that as a district. Anything you want to share else on any of that? No? Okay. All right, thank you. That was very informative, very helpful. All right. We need to approve, we have no call to the public, correct? Okay. We need to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
You pick. It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Moving on to the budget adoption for fiscal year 25 that Mr. Martin presented earlier. I will go ahead and motion to approve that. Do I have a second?
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then modifications to all coaching instruments and the Dean of Student Observation instrument. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Okay. Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Comments from the board. We'll start with you, Ms. Abeg, since you're not physically with us.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me in here, and I appreciate all the information, even working in the summer to keep us all informed of things inside and outside our district, and all the hard work that goes into keeping the district running smoothly.
Thank you, Ms. Abeg. Ms. Getzke?
So to the 10-month staff, I hope you guys had a really great summer and you're looking forward to coming back. A special thank you to the 11-month staff, in my opinion. Those summer school staff that ran through summer school and continued on with didn't have a break in summer till now. I appreciate that, and I know there's a lot of parents and students who really benefit from summer school
Who never leave.
are working in the summer and in the heat, where some of your peers are probably enjoying their full-time vacations. But I hope you guys had a nice week last week with the 4th of July. And I'm definitely looking forward to the welcome back celebration. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate that. And I also am in for advocation of the free reduced school lunch. So anything that we can do to partner up on that, I think it's specifically important to this community. But I know it's important to everybody. That's it. Dr. Watson?
During the summer, I get to see a lot of families who, kids are gonna go back to school. And I've been amazed over the last month, people that have asked about our school district. And there were kids in charter schools, and it's like, look, just visit us, go on our website. And it is very proud to be able to send them there and see our schools doing what they're doing. If I'm not mistaken, 4 out of 5 families will move to our district, just from my, so I would, this is my spiel to them. I'm like, look, we have 9 different schools. Each school has its purpose, or its, and, you know, you may have 5 kids, and they all might need to go to different schools, but they're gonna excel, because they're gonna be able to live and do the things they wanna do, you know, the coding, the theater, just the dual language, the global, reach that we have. So it's just really nice to be able to give them some reassurance. But on the back end of that, they're older kids. Where should we go to high school? And that's been such a tough, what do I say to them? So I'm hoping our relationships with our high schools continue to get better. I believe it is. I think it's, you know, we've created a culture in our school district that hasn't been mimicked yet by our, who we're feeding. And so we just need to keep, you know, elaborating on those relationships, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
No comments really, but just to enjoy those last few weeks and looking forward to seeing everybody back.
I'll just say I am so proud of our schools and proud of our district. We are the heart of our community, and we will be for many, many years to come with the incredible staff that we have. And I'm excited to see everybody on the welcome back. Okay, the next meeting will be on August 15th. School will have been in session for 7 or so days by then. 8 days? Hard to believe. Yeah? 10 days? Okay, wow. Here we go. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.